Joining us now, Rob Crilly with the Washington Examiner. He's a White House correspondent with the Examiner, one of my favorite publications. This is following 2 decades at British newspaper. When you work for the British tabloids, man, you got it going on, because that is fast and furious. He previously spent 5 years as a U.S. reporter, editor, and political commentator with the Daily Telegraph. Before that, he served as Pakistan and Afghanistan correspondent, so he's covered wars, reporting from some of the world's most hostile environments. He was also with the London Times. And he's joining us now, Rob Crilly. Great to have you, Rob.
Good morning. Lovely to be with you.
Okay, Rob, you like my World Series prediction?
I absolutely do. As a Mets fan, I would be all in favor of that, and I like the idea of the Yankees closer staying at home for the season.
I think you should stay
home. We're fully on board with that.
Yeah, look, because, cut the grass, take care of your family, get a little R&R, come back next season. I'm all in favor of that. Rob. Of course, our guys are all playing. Here's why I love this play. All the Astro players are playing, and all the players are playing for the Mets. And with the pitching the Mets have, in 60 games, it's all about the pitching, right? There's only so many games you're going to win 10-8. So that's why I like Mets Astros. Let's get to Trump campaign. A lot of rumors about turnover. Is Pascal out? I know you've been covering this, the campaign fledgling about right now. What have you heard, Rob?
Well, look, they just can't catch a break, can they, at the moment? New Hampshire, a rally on Saturday. This was supposed to be the big reset. Then it gets postponed at the last minute because of a tropical storm rolling through. But I think we all know the weather wasn't going to be that bad in New Hampshire. So, there's all sorts of question marks about were they going to get poor attendance again after the whole Tulsa debacle. So, look, the campaign is in a mess. Now, I've been hearing that a lot of the criticism, a lot of the problems are coming from the very top, from Brad Pascal. There's a lot of concerns about whether he really has the political nous to be able to handle this sort of role in a campaign. He's a digital guy. There's no doubt he runs a decent digital operation, one of the keys to the 2016 campaign. But after Tulsa, there was a lot of feeling that he was responsible for overhyping the expected turnout. And, of course, what did they get, like 6,000 after claiming 1 million people had signed up? So I was hearing a lot of anger and criticism being directed at him. Now, he's a Kushner guy. So you've got Kushner in the White House essentially overseeing a lot of the campaign from there. So there's a feeling that Brad Pascal, is insulated for the time being. We've seen some changes. We've seen the likes of Bill Stepien being promoted. We've got Jason Miller, we know, came in as a senior advisor and seems to be now the key political strategist. So I think that's the way this is going to go. You're going to see Brad Pascal being slightly sidelined, being on top of the digital side of things. I'm not expecting him out. Who knows? Ask me tomorrow and that could all have changed, but that's not what I'm picking up at the moment. What I'm picking up is that this sort of kitchen cabinet of the White House made up of Hope Hicks is another figure. Jason Miller talks to the president all the time. And I'm getting the sense that there is a bit of a change of emphasis, but I don't, I think to be making those huge changes right now would signal panic. To be honest, I think there is panic there in the background, but they don't want to be signaling that. I think Brad hangs on for now. What are you hearing?
Look, Rob, I think you're spot on. There was a rumor surfacing or running around that Ed Rollins was going to take over for Brad Pascal. Ed Rollins, like the last campaign he ran, was Bob Taft in 1956. You got to be kidding me. I don't even think he knows what the internet is. So a lot of these rumors are asinine. And somebody asked me, well, who do you think started it? I'm like, Ed Rollins. Of course he started it.
That's absolutely it. I think any Republican strategist who thinks they're a big deal is throwing their hat in the ring. There's a lot of briefing going on. Of course, the name that always comes up is Steve Bannon. What is he up to? Is he a figure who could become more influential? And my understanding is that the president doesn't talk to him regularly, but you've got the likes of Jason Miller, of course, who was doing the podcast with Steve Bannon. Now he's in a senior position, and it feels like there's a conduit there from Steve Bannon into the campaign. So look, I think there are lots of figures floating around. Some people are talking themselves up. Some people are briefing themselves up, thinking there may be some changes to come. Another name I sometimes hear is Kellyanne Conway. Is she going to get moved from the White House?
Well, see, that makes sense to me. When you move somebody into a senior role, I believe Kelly should go into a senior role. I believe Corey Lewandowski should go in a senior role. I know that's been widely discussed several times. But I think there's a difference between going into a senior role and taking the campaign over. I really can't see Pascal getting displaced. Like you said, Rob, I think you're spot on. Rob Crilly, 100 days out, you're going to change campaign managers. I mean, it's one thing if you did that back in May or June, but 100 days out, I just, going up to the convention, I just don't see it. And so I think he stays. The other thing is, if there's anything that Brad Pascal does better than anybody, it's the digital effort on the campaign. I mean, this is why they hired him, and that's now coming into play. It didn't necessarily come into play 12 months ago. It's coming into play now, bigger than ever. So I just don't see them making change. But I do see some senior people coming in to augment the effort, and I see Corey Lewandowski as one and Kellyanne as one. I mean, why waste Kellyanne right now in a White House staff position? Why would you do that? How does that make sense? How does that help him?
So I was told the job she would want would be campaign manager. So that's your problem. Can you put her into a senior enough role for her to want to move over? I mean, I suspect she probably is doing more and more from the White House, having a quiet word with the president here or there, or doing her TV hits and getting her messaging in. Remember, a week or so ago, she was appearing on I think on Fox News, saying that she'd been talking to the president about doing open air rallies. And lo and behold, what happens? We have a New Hampshire rally lined up.
Right, open air rally.
Yeah, so she is wielding influence in that way. And to come back to Brad's role, I think the problem for him at the moment is a lot of his data operation is figured around the rallies. You have to give up your cell phone number in order to register, and that then lets the campaign into a huge trove of information they have in databases that they can then target you to turn you into a possible voter, into a definite voter. And I think if you can't have rallies, and a big chunk of his strategy comes undone and has essentially been immobile for the last 3 or 4 months. So I think the campaign has got to come up with a plan B, because plan A, which this data-driven rally approach, which would have been powerful, I think they're struggling to find an alternative at the moment. And that's a real problem.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Great to have you with us. Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Rob Crilly, White House correspondent, Washington Examiner. Rob, let's get to the White House Correspondents Association. By the way, they kicked me out, if you don't know that, just FYI, because I'm for the second time, a Trump delegate to the National Convention. So they decided I can't be a member of the White House Correspondents Association, so they kicked me out. But let me just ask you this. Everybody in the White House that used to go to the press briefings, if you don't have an assigned seat, they kicked you out because of COVID-19. How long do you see this continuing before they open it up again? Like, I used to be able to go every day. I have a hard pass. But then when COVID-19 came along and they had the restrictions, they said, well, it's only going to be assigned seats, and it's only going to be one out of every 3 people or 4 or something like that. They did a rotation. When do you see that ending?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are struggling with that. There's, 49 seats in that room, and then you can line up down the side. So, you get 70, 80, maybe 100 people in. Mm-hmm. And they're down to 2 people a row. It's 14 people in those briefings now. I've heard no word. I asked a couple of weeks ago what was likely to happen. I mean, what I would say is the White House Correspondents Association is taking, I think, a fairly conservative approach to this. Mm-hmm. So I don't see anything changing before too long. I mean, part of the problem is, what the conditions are like in there. It's very, very cramped. So it's difficult to maintain any space between people. So look, I think it gives the press secretary a little bit of an easy ride. She's got 14 people to deal with. Mm-hmm. So I think probably that the White House itself is not averse to having fewer people in there. But I fear that although things in D.C. feel like they're getting back to normal, I think the cases on the rise elsewhere. I can't see us getting back to a full house there anytime soon.
You did a piece yesterday or the other day that I thought was excellent on Kayleigh McEnany, the new White House press secretary, Rob. and a lot of people criticizing her because they say she's too political. Well, Sean Spicer was political. Stephanie, I don't think, had any press conferences that I can remember. Certainly Sarah Sanders, everybody's political because you're advocating on behalf of the president. So what on earth were they complaining about?
Yeah, I mean, the issue I wanted to sort of get to the bottom of was it felt like the president now has a press secretary built in his own image a little bit. Mm-hmm. Somebody who will go out and go toe-to-toe with the press. And, a number of journalists got a little bit upset because she's up there essentially critiquing our stories, critiquing our performance in the briefings. She's like, you remember last week, I forget which day, but she said, why are you asking all these questions about the Confederate flag? Why aren't you asking these questions? And so I think people get a bit sensitive. But in my piece, what I wanted to get into was what does the White House want her to do? And the message I got from insiders was that they see her job as not just speaking for the president, but actually speaking for the American people and sort of expressing some of the frustrations they believe the American people feel with today's media. Now, look, I'm a journalist, and if ever I'm going to pick sides, I'm always going to come down on the side of the First Amendment and my colleagues in the press. But at the same time, I'm a big boy, and if someone wants to stand at that podium and give us a few slaps, well, I mean, as you said in your very kind introduction, I've operated in some pretty hostile environments, and I come from a world of sort of British newspapers as well, where I've been sworn at and shouted at and all sorts of things by press secretaries all around the world. So if Kayleigh McEnany is going to stand up there and give us a bit of a dose of our own medicine, we hurl some tough questions at her. Right. If she's going to hurl some tough responses back, I think we should be big enough to take it. Now, I think the question you can ask is she then explaining the president's policy? Is she explaining what the administration is doing? Mm-hmm. Is she getting across their policy message? Mm-hmm. And I think, actually, in the long run, there may be some feeling at the White House that they don't just need her to be punching back. They need her actually to be laying out what the president's agenda is, particularly as we head into an election, when you just wonder what it is the president wants to get done in the rest of his term and a potential second term. So look, I mean, I think each press secretary brings their way of operating to the job, and I think you can go back, as you did, through President Trump's press secretaries, and they've each adopted different approaches. And the feeling I got among the insiders was that Sean Spicer was a nice guy, but had never really quite understood what the president was trying to do because he came from sort of the Republican establishment in a way. Sarah Sanders did get to grips with what the president wanted, but ultimately just got worn down by the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I think how Stephanie Grisham, as you say, was just invisible and never did any briefings, and so it's difficult to really say how she was doing the job. But that Kayleigh has come in and really got the brief of the job the president wants her to do and understood it from day one. Although there was as I say, there's a note of caution from one of my colleagues who pointed out this idea that there's only 14 journalists in that room at the moment, and will she be able to punch back as effectively once that is kind of a febrile
it gets a little bit tougher. Yeah, I mean, when you got 15 people there, it's manageable. The days before COVID, like you said, Rob, we had, on any given press conference, you had 80 people there, lined up on the sides. And in the back, you don't have that now. Rob, we're out of time. I want to thank Rob Crilly for being with us. Rob, if somebody wants to get your alerts from the Washington Examiner, where do they go? What do they do?
It's all there on the website. There's no subscription necessary. We're at WashingtonExaminer.com, and you can find my stuff all on my author page, Rob Crilly.
All right, go to WashingtonExaminer.com. Rob Crilly, White House correspondent for the Examiner, on top of it. Hey, Rob, thanks for your insight, man. Great job. Thanks for being with us.
Good stuff. Thank you.